Hello, everybody. My name is Shelby Dwyer. I'm a counselor at University of Counseling Services. Oh, this is Luca, as some of you, Big Yawn might know. So he might join us periodically for the practice. As I mentioned, I'm from UHCS, and this is Yoga for Mental Wellness, which is a collaboration between myself and University Health and Counseling Services and the Center for Spirituality, Dialogue, and Service. Today, you will want a bolster or a pillow. If your pillows are pretty thin, you might stack two of them on top of each other. You'll want 2 blocks or a stack of textbooks, and then also a blanket. I'm using a cushion, which is actually really pretty. I'm using a cushion for padding for my knees instead of a blanket. Okay, Luca might come back. We've lost him. He's trying to get through the door. Oh, I might have to help him. Oh, no, he got it. Okay, good. So today, just before we get started, we are going to jump back into doing a little jump back. We're not jumping at all, but we are going to be coming back to Yin Yoga today. And so just as a reminder, before we even talk about the practice, please listen to your body, do what's best for you. You know your body best, and you are the expert of your body. Everything that I share today is an offering and not something that anyone has to do. So if you need to lie on your mat the entire time, that's totally okay. So back to Yin Yoga. Today, we are going to practice more Yin Yoga style. The weather has changed a little bit here in Boston, and we're heading more into late summer. Classes are starting soon, as you all know, and I thought it might be nice to sort of honor that shift in the season by doing a Yin practice. So Yin Yoga is rooted in traditional Chinese medicine, and it follows since it's based in traditional Chinese medicine, the types of movements that we do follow these meridians in the body. So they're similar to sort of like the chakra system in the body. Today we're going to be focusing on the spleen and stomach meridians. And that's because those are the meridians associated with late summer. So again, that traditional Chinese medicine take. And we can see, hopefully I can show you all this. So we can see here that these are where the meridians flow in the body, specifically the stomach and spleen. We can see that it's mostly through the front of the body, the inner leg line, the hips, even some of the face on, I think it's the stomach. Yeah. So we'll be focusing on those today as we move. I'll try to pepper it in. The other thing is that the traditional Chinese medicine is also associated with the 5 elements. And the one that's associated with late summer is earth. So hopefully this practice can potentially feel grounding for you, especially when we're in such a time of, things are changing. You might be getting ready to go back to classes or come back to campus or Boston or whatever it might be. So hopefully this can provide a little bit of some support. I think I've talked enough. So our first shape is going to be sort of a variation on fish pose, but it'll be a heart opener. And so you'll want your pillows or your yoga bolster perpendicular with the short edge of your mat. And it's going to rest somewhere along your upper spine. We're going to be lying back down over it. You'll also want one of your blocks or maybe another pillow to rest under your head. And so I have to kind of shimmy because my bolster is big. But I have my bolster lined up so that it is basically along, let's see, it hits the bottom of my ribs. Now keep in mind, anatomically, y'all are different. We're all totally different. So where it might feel comfortable for you could be very different. The goal here is that you want to be opening up through your chest so that your heart is kind of shining up towards the sky. Maybe there's even an opening across your throat just to kind of stimulate the throat chakra and communication and all those fun things. And then depending on what you're using, if you're using a stack of books, a pillow, or a block under your head, you might have to play around with the height to find what works for you. You don't necessarily want your head just hanging because that's going to put, oh gosh, it just feels awful. You don't want your neck straining, and you want to be relatively supported here in this shape. If you extend your legs long, that is going to potentially accentuate just a little bit the opening across your belly, so really getting into the stomach meridian. Also the spleen meridian, since that's also here. And you might even practice or try putting your arms in more of like a goalpost shape around your head. That's going to potentially add a little bit more pressure to your shoulders and open up the shoulder joint a bit more. We're not going to really be doing much with the shoulders today. It's mostly going to be like our legs and things like that. Legs, inner leg line, hips. But if you're hunched over a computer a lot of the time, like me, this might feel really good across your upper back. So set yourself up well, whether you keep your knees bent, feet flat on the floor, or extend your legs. Ideally, we have an arch in our spine, an opening across our chest. You might see me periodically check my Fitbit, and that's my watch. I'm just checking for time. In Yin Yoga, we hold poses for a few minutes, sometimes as long as 8 minutes, although we don't do that as often in this class. But the reason we hold these shapes for longer periods of time, as opposed to like vinyasa classes where it's 1 breath per movement, is we're targeting the connective tissues in the body, so the joints, the ligaments, the fascia, all of these things that support our muscles and support our whole body. By applying a slow and consistent pressure or stress on our body. So right now we're having this slow opening of our chest, this arch along our back. And as we stay in the shape more, our body begins to relax. And that gives into the shape a little bit more. The shift in our body also signifies that we're getting into those connective tissues because those cannot be stretched very quickly, right? We want to really slowly work into them because if we were to really, forcefully, quickly try to stretch a ligament, it would snap. We're not working our muscles, so we don't need that repetitive movement. And so here you can allow your body to sink into the shape and be held by the supports you might be using. This is a great opportunity to breathe more into your belly. While you can't necessarily breathe into that space, your lungs don't reach all the way that far, can you imagine that you could direct your breath into your belly so that as you inhale, your belly expands, then the ribs expand. Maybe even the chest lifts slightly, and then as you exhale, everything softens in reverse, so the chest softens, the ribs, and the belly. But breathing deeply into the belly encourages that breath with our diaphragm. It also offers the body a chance to relax and activate more of the parasympathetic nervous system. So that parasympathetic state is that rest and digest. Take a few really deep, full breaths here, breathing into the belly. Just releasing any tension in your body. Perhaps you might offer this in this moment a commitment to yourself to really be present in your practice. Offering yourself these 60 minutes of space to breathe and to move just for you. Nobody needing you to do anything, no assignments due, no readings to do. Take one more full breath in here. Exhale. Gently push yourself up, lifting yourself, maybe straightening through the arms to allow your torso to come upright. And then you'll place your bolster or pillows off to the side for a moment. And then return to lie down on your back. Maybe keep your knees bent. You might walk your feet to the edges of your mat, knock your knees together. Maybe your hands rest along your belly. Soften your spine, let your spine really relax. It might still be clenching since we were in that arch. And notice what it's like now to have your back, your spine fully flush against the floor. Notice any differences along your collarbone, your chest, the front of your body. Take a big breath in. Exhale, gently flop over, flip over, flop over, whatever you want to do, onto your stomach. And then push yourself up into all fours. And here's where you might want to set your blocks or your books at the top of your mat. And you may also want your cushion or a pillow or your blanket as some support nearby about halfway down your mat, just as you might need it for your knees. I know I will need it for my knees. So coming into all fours, let's just move through a few cat and cows at your own pace. So cow, dropping the belly, pushing your heart through your collarbones. Tops of your feet are firm against the mat. As you exhale, you'll round your spine, push the floor away, coming into cat pose. Chin towards chest. Inhaling for cow. Exhaling for cat. You might even kind of wiggle your hips from side to side, let your head drop. If you have long hair like me, you can mop your mat with your hair. And then whenever you feel complete, you'll step your left foot in between your hands. And you might have to shimmy it forward just a little bit. I'm going to bring my cushion underneath my right knee, just because my knees are a bit sensitive. And then in this shape, you're coming into, it's basically a low lunge. You want your hips to sink forward and down, but you don't necessarily want to just kind of flop forward. So bring yourself upright. Oops, balance is key. Bring yourself upright for a moment. Kind of level your hips out. You might have to sort of push your right hip forward a little bit, pull your left hip back just to make sure that your hips are even, and then begin to sink forward. You might start here by resting your hands on the top of your knee. I realize I'm going to have to actually switch because there's one shape that we'll be doing where I don't want to turn my back to you. But you'll rest your hands on top of your left knee. Again, still hips are moving forward and down. Engage your core a little bit here just to protect your spine and keep your torso upright. If this feels like it's a little bit too much effort, you can always bring your hands down to blocks or your books on either side of your front foot, still keeping your torso relatively upright. Your left knee is stacked over your left ankle, but don't worry if it moves forward and kind of, is lunging, your knee is lunging forward of your ankle. That's okay. It's actually a movement that we do when we're going up the stairs, right? And because the muscles are passive here, we're relaxing the muscles in our legs. We're targeting the connective tissues. So hopefully, ideally, you're not actually, by extending your knee forward, you're not doing any harm to the muscles. So as much as possible, relaxing into the legs. This is dragon pose, technically upright dragon if you've got your hands resting on your left knee. This might feel pretty intense of an opener on top of your quad, the top of your right thigh. You might even feel some pressure on the inside of your left hip since we are kind of pushing our pelvis into our thigh. There might be some pressure in the bottom of your left foot, maybe in the right knee or top of your right foot. If you press a little bit more into the top of your right foot, you might notice that alleviates some of the pressure in your right knee. And we will not be here necessarily for too long because we're going to do a couple of variations. In Yin Yoga, for me personally, the way that I teach is without music. It's also with live streaming. I haven't quite figured out how to stream music while I also stream me teaching. So if anyone has tips, please shoot me an email. But sometimes when we have silence and there's no distractions, our mind might wander. We might think of all the things we need to do or we haven't done or something we forgot, whatever it might be. Maybe our mind wanders to something that's unresolved, a worry that we've been having. And that's okay, right? That's just our brain doing its job. And in this practice in Yin Yoga, we're experiencing sensation within our body. So for example, right now, as I said, you might have some pretty significant sensation across the top of your right thigh, that quad muscle. And so perhaps those sensations within your body can be a reminder to come back to the present moment, to come back to your breath, to come back to what you're actually doing right now versus these kind of thoughts fluttering around in your brain. Slowly begin to sink your hips back toward your right heel, straighten through your left leg just for a moment, just to kind of give it a break. And then as you feel ready, you'll bend back into your left knee. I know, we're not done yet. And then you could walk your blocks or your books to the inside of your left leg. You might lower the height of those props, maybe coming down to your forearms, again on the inside of your left leg. I'm going to bring myself at an angle because I feel like this is a weird setup. Okay, hopefully this makes a little more sense. So you could come down to your forearms. This probably is awful because I can't see myself and you can't see me. We'll just go with it. And if you choose to come down to your forearms, just make sure that you're not having any like intense pulling or tugging across the inner leg line. We don't want any numbing. We don't want any sharpness. We're avoiding pain, even though this practice is one that is an uncomfortable practice. See if you can really breathe deeply into your belly, just as we did on the first side. This variation is known as overstepping dragon or low dragon. And I didn't say this, but even as where you might be lower with your forearms on the floor or on props, or maybe on your, still on your hands with your arms long, your left foot is still fully planted on your mat. So we don't want it winging out to the side or anything, at least not yet. We'll be doing a shape next that will offer that. So really letting the hips sink forward, relaxing the muscles in your legs, specifically relaxing the muscles in your right leg. Maybe taking some big, powerful breaths and sighing out the mouth if that feels good. As you feel ready, begin to straighten through your arms. And again, you could sit your hips back toward your heels, straighten out through your left leg. You might even take a quick child's pose. That might feel really good to release your legs for a moment, release your back. I'll show that real quick before I switch. So child's pose, sinking our hips back to our heels, extending our arms long in front. Resting your forehead onto the mat. And then whenever you feel ready, gently coming back up into your dragon pose. So left foot is forward. Your hands are on the inside of your left leg. And again, hips are moving forward and down. We're going to move into twisted dragon. So this is where you'll come onto the outer edge of your left foot. And you might keep your left hand resting on top of your left thigh, maybe even just encouraging an opening. I get so many spam phone calls, sorry. Maybe even encouraging an opening of your chest. Since this is twisted dragon, you might experience a bit of a twist along your spine. You might gaze toward the side of your space, or maybe even looking back over your left shoulder. Your right arm can be long, hand pressing into the floor, or maybe you bring a block or another prop underneath it. You could also come down to your forearm, fingers spread wide, twisting, more like a low twisted dragon. For me personally, that pulls a little too much on my hip flexors, so I like to be more upright. And here it's of note, your hips are not even, right? You're going to be sinking into your right hip a little bit. So the hips are not sort of that level that they were before. I don't know if that helped. And because we are using the muscles in our right arm to prop us up, we will not be here for too long. So again, remember your ability to breathe through this discomfort. Maybe sighing out the mouth. Maybe breathing more deeply into your belly. Know you can always shift your body out of this shape at any time if it feels too intense. This is your practice. Nothing is a demand. Oops. Let me ease out. Looks like we got some questions. Ooh, oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, someone's asking questions. Should my left foot be pointing out? Yes, so your left foot in this shape, in the twisted dragon, your left foot's at a little bit of an angle and you're on the edge, like the razor edge of your left foot. And if your arms are a little too long to be leaned back, I'm trying to think of what you mean by that. So it's, let's see. I mean, your arms are too long to be leaning back. I'm not sure what you mean. You might come down to your forearm in that case, so that maybe you're just a little bit closer to the ground. Although if you have really long arms, that might help you twist. I don't know. Rasheen, feel free to ask another question or comment. Oh, good, perfect, you're welcome. Oh my gosh, this is my first time interacting with the audience. I'm so excited. All right, so sink your hips back toward your heels. Extend through your left leg once more. Just feel that release, and then let's all sink into a child's pose for a moment. So again, this time you might take your knees wide apart if you had them close together for the first one. So figure out what works for you. And then again, you can sink your hips back toward your heels. Maybe let your arms drape alongside you, fingertips grazing your heels, just to let your shoulders rest, especially since your right shoulder just did a lot of work. And then take some more grounding deep breaths here. Really let your nervous system, settle for a moment. Child's pose or embryo pose, which is where you have your arms draped alongside you, can be a nice pose to do if you ever feel really overstimulated. One of the emotions associated with late summer, according to traditional Chinese medicine, is anxiety. Might be ruminating, a lot of thoughts, just a lot of worries coming up. And by sort of cocooning ourselves, coming down really low into a little, almost like a little ball with the front of our body really protected where all of those major organs are, it offers our body a sense of security and comfort. And hopefully that can also translate to offering our brain that sense of security and comfort. So whenever you feel ready, you'll come back up onto all fours. And you might rinse out your spine a little bit, maybe do some cat-cows at your own pace. Again, you'll want your props, the blocks or your books near the top of your mat in case you use them on the first side. Make sure to pad under your knee as well. And we'll be moving on to the right side for our dragon sequence now. So you'll extend your right foot forward in between your hands. You might have to shimmy the leg forward a little bit. I'm going to try to move back so y'all can see me. It's kind of this dance between moving your right knee forward, sliding your left leg back if you can. And then, again, your right knee is stacked over your right ankle. You'll rest your hands maybe on the top of your right knee. Remember to set yourself up well. Make sure that your hips are relatively even. And then you're sinking your hips forward and down. If you have any knee discomfort in your left knee, you can press into the top of your left foot gently. And notice how that activation offsets maybe some of the pressure in the left knee. If it feels a little bit too intense on your back to be upright, because it does invite a little bit of a back bend here, you can always bring your blocks or your books on the outside of your right foot and then extend your arms long, press your hands into those supports, and then keep a long spine slightly angled over your right knee. Wherever you are, whether you're upright or at a slight angle, ensure that you're keeping your neck in line with the rest of your spine. So we don't necessarily want to crank the head up and put more pressure on the neck. You might have to tuck your chin slightly and then imagine that you could push the top of your head up just to ensure that there's no compression in the spine. So here in this upright dragon shape, you might feel now the stretch has shifted to the top of your left thigh, the quad muscle there. You might even feel some compression in your right hip, that hip flexor, the part where your the right thigh meets your right hip. If you're upright here, you might even experience a little bit of a slight compression in the low back, since there is a little bit of a back bend. And while your arms are doing some work to keep yourself upright, your core is also a little bit activated to keep your torso upright. You might, I just saw there was a question, I'm gonna come grab it. You will want to relax your legs. So there are certain muscles we're activating right now, right? Arms, core, the legs will be relatively relaxed. I'm gonna gently just peek and see what questions there are. Okay, should my Be in line. Great question. So in dragon pose, right now, the way that we are doing it, this shape, our feet are on sort of like railroad tracks. So our front foot, the right foot, is not in alignment with our left knee. We want our feet to be hips width apart, which is why we started in that all fours shape, right? Although I didn't cue it, our feet were technically hips width distance apart if your knees were about hips width distance apart. So great question. Thank you. Yes. We want to be sort of on like T tracks. Boston reference. All right, we've got about a minute or so here. So remember just to keep breathing deeply into any sensation. You know that this is temporary since we did it on one side. Take a big breath in here. Exhale, sit your hips back toward your heels. Extend your right leg long. Maybe your toes flex up towards the ceiling. Allow the back of your leg to get a little bit of a stretch here. And then whenever you feel ready, bending back into your right knee, bringing the blocks or your books on the inside of your right foot. You might walk your right foot out just a little bit wider to allow for space. And then bending forward into your right knee. Again, your hips will sink forward and down. You might come down to your forearms on the inside of your right foot. Again, the right foot is flat on the ground. It's okay if your knee wings out a little bit to the side, but keep your foot relatively, like fully on the ground if you can. If it means that coming down to your forearms, your foot wings out a little bit, come back up higher. And then again, allow the muscles in your legs to relax. All right. Gosh, you're asking such great questions. So if I feel tightness in the upper left thigh, am I overstretching it or is it the right side? So it might feel tight. And when you're, like, you'll know when you're overstretching part of your body, right? Because let me just check the time, make sure I'm still doing it. I don't want to keep you in poses longer than I need to. Tightness is normal. Any kind of pain, sharpness, like an aggressive pulling that feels like it's going to snap, those are the things that we want to avoid. But tightness is probably something you'll run into more often than not in a yin practice. And it doesn't mean that you should go further or try to push through it. I might encourage you to maybe ease back slightly. I didn't say this already, but we want to find about a 4 or 5 out of 10, where 10 is like so uncomfortable, I can't be in this pose anymore. 1 is I could fall asleep here. So not too intense or not too gentle. So finding where the tightness feels like it's not too intense, it's not too gentle, but you can hold for a period of time with the muscles relaxed. That's how you're going to get into the connective tissue. Oftentimes we might feel tight or we might hit like a wall when we're targeting those connective tissues, and that's okay. As long as we can relax and just allow the body and the stress that we're putting on our body with our body to do that work, the tightness will start to become less and less. You may also notice that there's tightness because, you know, not all of us, like how often are we in lunges, right? Like how often are we doing this shape in our daily life? So it might be that there are parts of your body that are more tight that you hadn't realized. All right, big breath in. Exhale, sink your hips back to your heels. Maybe take a child's pose with your knees closed or knees close together. Rest your head onto your mat. Let your body settle for just a moment. And then whenever you feel ready at your own pace, again, coming back up into your low lunge, your dragon pose, right foot forward, and then you'll slowly begin to come onto the edge of your right foot, the outer edge, excuse me, of your right foot, winging your right knee out to the side. And then you might stay with arms long, hands, I almost said feet, hands pressing into your supports, your blocks, books, or the mat. Maybe you come down to your left forearm or your left elbow. You might bring your right hand to your right knee and gently coax the knee out. But if that makes any sharpness on the inner leg line or the groin, no need to do that. Just gently ease back. You notice that this shape also in Twisted Dragon, right? It allows us to sort of twist and open up our body towards our right, maybe gazing over the right knee or looking back over the right shoulder. Hips are sinking forward and down. That's a great question. I will address that one when we do child's pose next. All right. So continuing to take some deep breaths here, breathing into any areas of discomfort, imagining that your breath might even just massage those areas, offering a little bit of release. You remember from the first side on our left side that we are not in this shape forever. It's temporary. Breathing through the discomfort, breathing with the discomfort. Take a long, full breath in here. Stick out your tongue, sigh it out. Slowly begin to extend your right leg long. Maybe just allow that to get a stretch across the back of your right leg for a moment, and then swing your right leg back to meet your left. Maybe take a wide knees, child's pose with your knees about the width of your mat. Sink your hips back toward your heels. Extend your arms long. And someone asked if your head should be rounding forward or if we should keep it in line with your spine. That's definitely whatever your preference is. Some folks like having a block or books underneath their head, underneath their forehead, as a way to keep their neck, their head a little bit more in line with their spine. Sometimes it might give you like a stuffy nose to have your head rounding forward and down. So just kind of pay attention to what works best with your body. And again, you can have your arms long in traditional child's pose, or maybe you take an embryo shape, wrapping your arms alongside you to rest your shoulders. Allow your breathing to slow down a bit. Allow the heart rate to lower if it maybe got a little high. And given that sensation might have been a little intense in those dragon shapes. As you feel ready, slowly use the arms to push your torso upright. And then come to sit on your mat. We're going to move into a different dragon, but dragonfly. And so for this shape, you'll want to be along the long edge of your mat. And you can extend your legs in like a V shape. You might choose, however, for some of this to just extend one leg at a time. So we'll start with our left leg. And so if you want to do one leg at a time, you would bring your right leg, your right foot in toward your hip so that your right heel would be coming in toward your pelvis. Alternatively, as I mentioned, you can continue to keep that right leg long. And then start to just sort of walk your torso long, reach the crown of your head towards the ceiling, and turn your torso so that you're facing your left foot. You might bring your right hand to the outside of your left leg and maybe wrap your left arm around the back of your waist. This exacerbates the twist. So alternatively, you can bring your left arm behind you, press into the floor to keep that length in your spine, and then twisting gently towards the left side of your space. So this is called a twisting dragonfly. And so if you remember from the meridian lines that I showed you at the start of our practice, right now we're getting into a little bit of the inner leg line, especially if you have your legs in that wide V shape. We're also getting into the midsection, so where our stomach and spleen are located, right? And we're twisting. And I don't know how much this is backed by science, but what I have read in some of the literature related to yoga poses are that twisting can be really nice for digestion and just kind of like this, it's almost like this way of massaging your internal organs. Maybe breathe really deeply into the spaces where you feel that twist. Breathing maybe more into the left side of your ribs. Keeping your spine long, gazing maybe over towards the left or maybe even back over your left shoulder, but not twisting to the point where you're experiencing any pain or a numbness or anything. We want to find that 4 or 5 out of 10 and then hold while breathing, of course. Your feet can be relaxed here. We've got less than a minute. Take a long breath in. Exhale, unwind forward. Maybe shake out your arms for just a moment. And then we'll move into a Dragonfly Fold. And for this, you might, if you've got really tight hamstrings, the back of your legs, you might bring blocks or your books or maybe even some pillows underneath your knees, just as that's going to help not tug on the muscles on the back of your legs so that when we begin to fold forward, it's not like a aggressive pulling. So coming back to that long spine, begin to walk your arms forward, maybe coming onto your forearms. You might stay with a long, straight spine here, maybe pressing your hands into the floor, keeping your arms long. If it feels okay and you don't have any back issues, you can always round your spine forward, letting the head fall, maybe tucking your chin toward your chest. But this shape is definitely going to get into, I shouldn't say definitely, for your body it could be different, but potentially into the inner leg line, maybe the hips and the groin. It's also targeting the back of the legs. And if you're rounding forward, we're also potentially targeting sort of the spine, since we're arching it and cascading it over our legs. So you might feel like a spreading of the shoulders as they melt towards the floor. Remember to release your head if you're rounding forward. But wherever you are, taking some deep, full breaths here. I'm just going to check. It looks like I got a question. All right, so Rasheen, I think when you asked, should our torso be upright? If that was in relation to the twisted twist, oh my gosh. Twisting Dragonfly Twist, whatever way it goes. Oh, yes, for Dragonfly. Yes. So I'll cue it on the next side. But yes, when we're in the twisting Dragonfly, you will keep your spine really long, and you can keep your head in line with your spine and just kind of play around with where it feels good to gaze, definitely without straining your neck. All right, so a few more big breaths here wherever you are, whatever way you're taking this Dragonfly Fold. Let the feet be relaxed, your ankles relaxed, your jaw is also soft. As you feel ready, big breath in. Exhale, walk the arms back to bring your torso upright. Remove the props from underneath your knees. And then if you took your bent knee on the first side, you can bring your left heel in toward your hips, coming into Dragonfly with just your right leg extended. You could also keep your legs both in that wide V, whatever feels more comfortable for your body. And we're moving into that Dragonfly Twist again. So bringing your hands, your left hand to the outside of your right thigh and your right arm behind you, pressing into the floor, keeping both arms long. Keep a really long spine, big breath in here. Crown of head reaching towards the ceiling. Exhale, gently twist towards the right. Maybe keeping your gaze along the path of like your right leg, or maybe gazing over your right shoulder. And your head will be in line with your spine, so you might notice where it feels best to kind of keep your gaze. We want to avoid putting a strain on your neck. If you did it on the first side, I know I offered it and then I never talked about it again, but if you wanted to take that deeper twist, bringing your, sorry, I'm mirroring you, so I keep forgetting right from left, your left hand on the outside of your right thigh, wrapping your right arm around you, maybe kind of grasping onto your left hip. But if you do that, make sure it's not compromising your shoulders. For me right now, I noticed I was rounding forward. So I'm going to stick with keeping my right arm propped up behind me and my left arm reaching over my right thigh. Shoulders are melting away from your ears. Again, spine is long, shoulders stacked over your hips. And breath is really full and deep in your belly. You might, as you inhale, make sure again that your spine is really long, seeing if you can maybe increase the space between your vertebrae along your spine. And maybe with each exhale or one exhale at some point, it allows you to sort of deepen the twist since we've been in this shape for a few minutes. Again, though, deeper is not better, right? We want to find what works for us, what works for our body, knowing that our body will react differently day to day in any pose, right? So one day I might feel like my body's super flexible and super open, and then another day I'm really tight. That's normal, right? So meeting our bodies where we're at. Rather than necessarily trying to conform into what we think looks good or what the deepest or fullest expression is. Take another long breath in here. Exhale, gently unwind your spine and then bring the soles of your feet together. You'll have your legs in about like a diamond shape for butterfly pose. This is different than butterfly in your vinyasa classes, is we're not going to have our heels close to our pelvis. We're actually going to extend our legs out a little bit. If it feels like it's a lot of pressure on your hip flexors to have your feet touching, you can always keep them apart, however many inches or feet makes sense to you. And you can keep a long spine here, maybe beginning to walk your arms forward, keeping a long spine, pressing your knees towards the ground to open up through the inner leg line. If it feels okay and you don't have any back sensitivities, you can begin to round forward. I have to like pop my leg. You can begin to round forward. I like to kind of shimmy my hips from side to side and just kind of melt my way down towards the ground. Your hands can rest on your feet, maybe massaging your feet, because how often do we do that? You could have your elbows pressing into your legs to encourage the opening of your knees from side to side. You could also have your hands resting on your ankles. And if you're taking that long spine, you can have your hands pressing into either side of, on the outside of your hips into the floor. You could also have them extended in front of you long, keeping that long spine, tucking your chin toward your chest to keep your neck in alignment with the rest of your spine. And again, growing your crown forward, top of your head forward. But again, here we're really getting into the stomach and spleen meridians with the inner leg line, maybe even the hips. You've been here for a few minutes, so notice if anything needs adjusting. If maybe you were rounding forward and you're starting to feel some dull tension in your back, you might bring yourself upright a little bit, or maybe even round further forward. Easing out of the shape or moving slightly deeper at any point is always welcome. And again, you know your body best, so do what feels best for you. See if you can almost imagine that as you inhale and exhale, it's almost like a wave of breath along any areas of sensation that you're feeling. Allowing your face to be soft, your jaws relaxed. All the muscles that you don't need right now are softened. When you feel ready, take a big, deep breath in. Exhale, let it go. Inhale, straighten your arms, bring your torso back upright. Pull your feet in closer toward your hips, so coming into more of that vinyasa style butterfly. And then just kind of wing your knees up and down, imagining that your knees were like butterfly wings and you could flop them up and down just to release any tension in your hips. You might move one in the opposite direction than the other. You might hear some cracking or popping. Just notice that my hip is popping. For me, that's probably arthritis, but for most people, when you hear sort of like after you move or shift out of one of the yin poses, you feel or hear a cracking or popping, it's usually a sign that you've targeted the connective tissue and you've been able to shift it in some way. So once you feel complete, after your butterfly is ready to go land on a flower and relax, you can start to lie down on your mat. And when you get there, hug your knees into your chest. Give your legs some love. Thanks, legs. They did a lot of work today. And then extend your legs long towards the ceiling for just a moment. Maybe goalpost your arms alongside your head. This is legs up the wall, which, we're not doing with a wall. But if you've taken this class before, I love this pose. Like, how often are we in a slight inversion, right? With our feet over our head? Not often. This is another one of those poses that can be, for some people, really relaxing to do before bed, kind of gets blood moving in a different way. It's also really nice to do after a run if y'all are runners. And then bend your knees, hug them in toward your chest one more time. Maybe curl up into a little ball for just a moment. And then extend your legs long along your mat. Maybe have your arms alongside you. Lift your head for a moment, tuck your chin toward your chest, and then gently release your head back down. That's just to make sure that our neck is in line with our spine, that we're not jutting our chin forward, that we're closing up, here across the throat to not have that part of our body be so activated. And then fidget as much as you need to, settle in, get yourself a blanket if you need to cover up if you're cold. And then when you feel ready, just allow yourself to be still if you can here in Shavasana, our final resting pose. Taking a few deep breaths, sighing in and out the mouth, relaxing every muscle in your body. From your forehead, your eyes, your jaw, all the way down to your ankles, your feet. Allowing your whole body to be fully supported by the earth beneath you. Consciously relaxing each muscle. Offering your body the chance to fully integrate your practice and the movement that you've just engaged in. And you can stay here for as long as you'd like, resting on your mat. But if you need to go, you can gently begin to deepen your breath, allowing your breath first to move and awaken your body from Shavasana. Maybe open and close the palms, roll out the wrists, roll out the ankles. And then curl up over onto one side, maybe hugging your knees toward your chest. And just pausing on your side for a moment, resting your head on your arm. Keeping your eyes closed or a soft gaze, gently begin to use the arms to bring yourself upright into a seated position. Align your spine well, shoulders over your hips. Maybe you're seated cross-legged or in hero's pose, whatever feels most comfortable. Bring your left hand to rest over your heart if you'd like. Right hand rests on top of left. Take a big, deep breath in. And sigh it out. Again, big breath in. Let it go. Last one, make it count. Big breath in. And exhale. Offer your body gratitude for being able to move in the way that it did today, the way that it supports you each and every day. Offer gratitude toward those who shared in this practice with you virtually and in spirit. And then lastly, send gratitude to anyone around you who maybe needs the support, or maybe someone you haven't reached out to in a while that you've been thinking of. Maybe gratitude and loving kindness to the whole world, as we could all use it right now. Slowly lower your hands to your legs. And gently begin to blink open your eyes and come back to your space. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. I appreciated your amazing questions. Please always feel free to ask any questions anytime. I don't think the chat actually saves afterwards, so your confidentiality is relatively protected. We will be here next week for another live stream of yoga for mental wellness. And I'm excited because a lot of folks are going to be joining live stream throughout the entire week with CSDS. So definitely check out their website because lots of folks are going to be teaching yoga. It's really exciting. We're so excited to be seeing you for the fall semester. Take good care, be well, drink some water, wash your hands. Go be amazing. All right. Bye, everybody. You're welcome.